Greetings, everyone. I am David Summersong.org, more or less. If you are reading this with or without the audio, it is laid out in the basic pattern of my speaking it, and my transcript PDFs on my webpage will be in this format for ease of use. Welcome to the first chap of circulation once again. This is a redo of a previous verbalization of largely the same material with a few minor additions and alterations. The reason for the redo is that I had wanted to create continuity in this series of talks that will lead us into iron shirt techniques, non-medical human cellular rejuvenation, and beyond. What I am saying evolves as I do. This talk was first made earlier, and now is now. So we will begin the series again now with new continuity. Previously, we briefly spoke of circulating one's cerebral spinal fluid. In order for this subject matter to make sense and to be understandable, we must refer to the larger matter of circulation in general. To best understand how our bodies operate, we must have some background information. Let us start with ancient knowledge. The simplest basis for the operation of the human mechanism can be stated thus: there is no disease but congestion, there is no cure but circulation. Acidity promotes congestion, while alkalinity promotes circulation. If one can understand this simple information, then all dis-ease becomes a matter of localized stagnation. The human body can be easily compared to a twisted soda straw. Commodities enter at one end and exit at the opposite one. This happens both on a macroscopic and microscopic level. The inner reflects the outer. There is an orchestra of types of circulation playing out their parts within each type of creature. When they play in harmony, it is advantageous to the energy level, endurance, and longevity of the participant. When there is discord and cacophony within the interaction, the results can be unfavorable to the point of termination. If one's understandings and behaviors do not reflect clarity about how the body operates, then one is likely to take drastic and inappropriate measures to rectify situations that were produced by ignorance. If one can grasp that on an etheric level, the human body is also like a soda straw filled with filters. The more present one is within the human body, the more condensed and flexible the soda straw is, and the more refined the filters are, which become capable of retaining more energy. Those beings who experience and create for themselves dissipation and fragmentation produce flaccid soda straws with vacuous filters incapable of retaining energy. If one becomes self-aware and is desirous of increasing their energy retention ability, one can prepare for the deliberate, conscious, and conscientious discipline of energy circulation within their own body. Entering upon this subject matter, it is entirely possible to become lost in extraneous detail. There are numerous books and approaches to Iron Shirt Qigong and other body and energy building disciplines. Decorative and allegorical information has been used over centuries because of a lack of an appropriate technical vocabulary that can be effectively communicated to participating individuals. It is my intention to deliver the very basic information without the embellishment of culture, ideology, or unnecessary flourishes. What I know is that if you feel what you are doing, you will discover much of the information on your own, as was done by ancient Taoists thousands of years ago. If you insist on embellishing your consciousness with decorative vocabulary and concept, there are many books on the marketplace available to you. Should you choose this venue, please be forewarned that across the board, the concept of moving energy through one's body is erroneously translated as swallowing air and pushing it through oneself. Never ever make this mistake should you utilize vocabulary building material. This is intended to indicate the movement of energy as pressurized by intent. Following some of these exercises, as they are expressed in various materials, will damage you. What I will offer to you is entirely harmless and extremely beneficial to you. If you are reading this or listening to me, the chances are large that you have been breathing for some time without damaging yourself. My counsel to you is based on acquainting you with the portions of your breathing cycle and what will happen to you if you acknowledge them and then feel them. You have likely heard about many methodologies of breathing. Like everything else, each methodology has its own origin and purpose. For me, ultimate self-awareness and dedication to the mother of everything is at the root of all of my behaviors. What I choose to express is based on pragmatism and personal experience. My body has been my laboratory for eons of time, and of late I have refined the process of research and investigation to the point where it has resulted in beneficial information and experience around the subject of rejuvenation. The more of my prior talks that you have listened to, and the more of my website that you have read, the easier it will be for you to understand who I am and thus follow my train of thought. We will begin with the idea of circular breathing within the body, and we will briefly discuss how some of the ancient words are relative to today's vocabulary and understanding. To become conscious of one's breath and breathing, one must first slow down enough to be able to put attention on it. The common understanding is that the diaphragm moves and air rushes in and or out of the lungs. While this is technically true, it lacks artistry and appreciation. Why should one care about the artistry of their breathing? How could one possibly have the time to even notice? This is where some of the ancient conceptual vocabulary words come in. Things like pray unceasingly and constantly remember the holy name of God. What can these things possibly mean to us in today's world? What can they possibly have to do with breathing? There is a very simple explanation which you can determine for yourself now immediately if you can stand up and walk a few paces. If you start out by looking down, you will see only a few steps in front of yourself. If you lift your eyes and your visual field so that you can see just above the horizon line, the panorama of life unfolds before you, and you see without looking. The ability to breathe with consciousness is the same as praying unceasingly and constantly remembering the name of God. So how does one look at something which has been totally unconscious throughout one's life and suddenly see it in tender artistic segments which, when understood, fold together beautifully like a lotus flower? Obviously, we must begin with some level of tactile information which can be directly experienced. It is likely that you are able to breathe in whatever position and condition you may be in at the moment. To facilitate your attention point and understanding, the minimization of discomfort is advantageous. The nose and the nasopharynx should be used for breathing rather than the mouth. Mouth breathing is a sign of congestion and acidity. Throughout the ancient literature are discussed the points of connection, pressurization, and acceptance within the breath and energy flow pattern. The truth and the depth of the understanding of the information is best and most readily gathered through actual experience of the energy flow itself within one. To that end, my explanation of the actual process will be as simplistic as possible in order to encourage you and allow you direct personal experience. Let us begin with the tongue. The tongue is the energy connector for the flow of circulation and movement within each breath cycle. There are 4 potential positions for the tongue that activate and are activated by neural networks on the roof of the mouth, which exactly parallel the neural networks on the interior walls of the vagina. The positions for the tip of the tongue in the mouth vary between resting just behind the top front teeth, 2 positions along the ridges on the roof of the mouth, and finally directly touching the bone that makes up the base of the brain. Each of these positions will have a different neurological effect, as will stimulation of different areas within the vagina. The breath cycle begins then with acknowledgement and appreciation. The most rudimentary understanding of breathing will turn out to be expansive in the long run. To help us visualize what actually happens internally, let us use pictorial visualization in an external sense to discuss the unseen. Let us imagine that we can watch our breathing cycle outside of us, instead of inside of us, as water with static cling rather than air. So from this point of view, we are standing here and we are going to take a breath. What happens is that the overflow of energy from our previous breath, which has gathered in our belly and enlarged our treasure of vitality, spills over and runs down our front to the very base of our spine, where it begins to climb back up the spine. Even though we are discussing breath at this moment, the movement of cerebral spinal fluid involves and is coherent with appropriate breath movement understanding. As our breath or inhale is beginning and energy is cascading down our front in order to prime the climbing part of the circulation, it is also invigorating our internal organs with energy as the flow passes through them. There are several places along the way as our breath moves coherent with our energy up the back of our spine where it is compressed and flow is assisted. There are volumes of decorative vocabulary, disciplines, practices, ideologies, concepts, and belief systems attached to each of these gateways, compression pumps, or storage stations. The burden of man, sometimes called the knowledge of good and evil, is to attach a name to things without necessarily being able to experience or understand them. As you practice the exercise of drawing yourself into your body and increasing your electromagnetic potentiality, your sensitivity to yourself will increase. You will begin to notice these manipulations that you make unconsciously to your own energy flow, and you will begin to be able to use them to your advantage. There is a reason why persons over thousands of years have pursued this information and attempted to utilize it within their own physiological presence. The more you know about the mechanism that you inhabit, the greater the chance that you can direct it toward a delightful and life-enhancing experience. So, we have our static, cling, watery breath spilling out just over our navel, running down our front, running up our back, climbing up our neck, and reaching the tip of the tongue. This is where we make the connection with our exhale. When one exhales with the tongue in contact with some part of the roof of the mouth or the bottom of the brain, then there is neural activity that does not happen without this connection. It influences both the results of the breath and the accumulation of stamina within the organism. This is also the point of consciousness. This is where the mystics and teachers of old who were interested in this type of discipline produced the term intending to intend to intend. What this means in plain language is that you will forget all about this over and over again, no matter how sincerely you try not to. The intellectual mind has great difficulty allowing things that it cannot be a part of. This is why I discourage decorative vocabulary and embellishment. You can only know the truth by how it feels. Information, although helpful, will never communicate actual truth any more than a picture of water will assuage your thirst. The more determined one is to acquire consciousness and remain awake, the more willing one must be to deal with the impediments to this process. Intellectual judgment of the utter simplistic is often one of these impediments. If one is capable of understanding oneself as a manifestation of energy, the concepts of breathing and circulation take on a new level of meaning.